Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Gray Area here on the Black Man Unfiltered Network, also simulcasting on the Sparta HQ Network. I'm Mr. Bennett with my partner, as always.
This is Sparta!
The ghost of Sparta, a.k.a. Peter, a.k.a. Paniotis. Yasu, my brother, what's going on?
What is going on this chilly night, actually?
Yeah, very much so. It's like, just when you think you want to put the jackets away and whatnot and start breaking out the spring wear, even though it's officially spring started, not quite yet. So I'm still bundling up a little bit. So yeah, my stuff's still going to be hanging out there for a while.
Today was actually a really weird weather day. I walked out, Alex. It was chilly, went to work, walked out to get some fresh air, jacket again. And towards the afternoon around 3-4 o'clock, I had walked back outside. Like, why am I wearing a jacket? It's so hot out here already. And like, you cannot win. You cannot win with this weather.
Absolutely. But just want to say shout out to the chat who's with us tonight. So again, we already got Marcus in the building. We got my man Eric, Seeking My Creator, also in the building tonight. My man Eric is in the building, and Wally also dropping by. Salute to you, sir, for dropping in to see us tonight. So all we ask is that when you come in tonight, either on the Black Man Unfiltered platform or on the Sparta HQ platform, just make sure you hit the like button on the way in. And certainly if you want to consider dropping a cash app to the Black Man Unfiltered Network or a super chat to us individually, you'll see that scrolling certainly throughout the show tonight. So we appreciate you guys being here on this Sunday. And shout out to BMU. I want to give my man a shout out, being the super dad that he is. His daughter and her basketball team just won an AAU championship in Texas today. So shout out to him and all the work that he's putting in to make sure that he has the success that she has, and certainly can't think of a better father and advocate for his daughter's goals and aspirations, and just putting in that work as a father should to make sure that his daughter's successful. So congratulations to her and her team and what they've been able to do. So,
you can say a lot of things about BMU. You can say he's a pain in the ass, he's a troll, you can say whatever, but you cannot say one thing: he's a bad father. He is a great father. Yeah, that is a role model for all of us who want to be fathers,
right? And not just a father to his own kids, but I mean certainly through his coaching and mentoring, he's worked with so many young people over the years. And so I just appreciate him for stepping in and being the gap and being a father for those who may not have fathers in the home. So, definitely goes above and beyond in terms of working with the kids. And so I certainly appreciate and respect him so much for the effort that he puts in there. So again, congrats to BMU for the job that you're doing, and certainly congrats to your daughter for that. But I want to go over into this topic tonight about alcohol. So I know we've had shows before on drugs and on smoking and whatnot. And I was just thinking about just different things that we haven't touched on specifically. And I wanted to kind of go over the topic of alcohol, and in particular alcoholism. Because one, it's a global product, if you will. It comes in different forms, and different countries have different ways of in terms of what they consume and how they like to consume it. And so I'm going to be showing some slides tonight regarding that, and just having a general conversation. Now, I am a lifetime teetotaler. And what that means is that I've never had really an alcohol. In fact, I remember 2 times specifically when I had alcohol beverage. One, I was 4 years old, and my uncle, he had a beer, he had a Budweiser. And I know
Yeah.
my cousin, he was always curious and whatnot. So he had a drink and I had a sip of it. And then at my senior prom, we were at a sort of like a pre-prom party, and I went over to get some punch, and I was so naive. I started drinking the punch and realized that the punch was spiked. But outside of that, outside of cough medicine, some Formula 44D or some Vicks NyQuil or something like that, I've never really consumed alcohol ever. Not in college, not in, and it's not necessarily due to religious reasons. It's mostly due to one, how I was raised by my mom. Again, my mother and dad, they were split when I was very young, and she, abhorred alcohol drinking. But then when I turned 14, I lived with my dad, and my dad was a massive drinker. And so just looking at that contrast between the two, I just sort of made the decision early on that I just didn't want to drink. Just seeing what it did, I think, certainly to my family long term prior to even getting there. And certainly after, seeing, my father, what the things he would get into. I loved him greatly. And it hurt me a lot of times when, to see him overconsume. But I just made a decision. So in high school, going to college, and especially freshman year, it was just a college rush. I mean, drinking was like the culture. It's like folks couldn't wait to get to college to drink. I never had the temptation to drink, even though people try to get me to, I had to watch. If I had a Coke or something, I always had to watch it, never let my drink out of the sight, because guys like, oh yeah, we're gonna get you drunk, we're gonna get. But I just never had the need for it. But having said that, I'm not opposed to people drinking. In fact, I've taught Bible classes where it's like there's no sin in the Bible against drinking.
That's correct.
But certainly getting drunk is a sin. And so, how do you help people to kind of know the difference between that is something that, is always interested to navigate. And I want to ask you, certainly from a Greek culture that we get into, what is alcohol consumption like, and to see if you can separate between in Greece from what you remember being in Greece, because I got some stats here that are pretty interesting. The stats in terms of drinking in Greece versus being Greek American, and then also like what the culture is like in terms of, is alcohol part of the culture? Meaning, like as a kid, I know so many different cultures where it's like alcohol is given to kids very early so that they don't go in the opposite direction. It's like here in America, it's like, yeah, you can't drink until, in most states, 21 years old. And obviously most kids are not even waiting that long, and a
Nobody waits
lot
that
of them
long.
go overboard. So what's the like Greek life when it comes to drinking alcohol, how it's introduced and whatnot. So why don't you talk a little
I
bit
have
about
to break that question in several ways. So when I lived in Greece, it was no age limit. So you can drink as young as you want to. So alcohol was introduced very young age. Back then, they thought it was better that way, so you can learn and how to handle alcohol. Let's be started here. You can alcohol can cause alcohol poisoning very easily, or get drunk too fast, or whatever. So that's why they teach her at a very, very young age. Like people always like at like 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10, 12, have a little sip out of their dad's little beer or wine. Nothing crazy, nothing heavy alcohol.
it.
When I was a very young age, before I moved to Greece, my dad's and my mom's friend, Jimmy, who was named, he may rest in peace. He passed.
Mhm.
He was murdered. He was a Turkish guy. Funny, Greeks and Turkish in the same house. That's odd, right?
Yeah.
So he used to have a habit when he used to drink beer, just leave him next to him. Me being a little rascal, I crawled over little drops. I drank the drops of it. So my dad looked at my mom and goes, Anna, come see your son drunk. Like, mom questioning him. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Whatever. You go, I'm like stumbling around. I took my diaper, I put it in a hat. I took my mom's cigar, like waving around, like I was pretending I'm a smoker. I didn't even put it in my mouth. I was just like going like this.
Yeah.
And they literally took a picture of me. Like, I'm not showing that picture because it's a very embarrassing picture. It is me half naked with a diaper in my hand, with a cigarette in my hand.
Oh my God.
So don't even think about it. Asking me, you're not going to see it. Maybe if you see it in person, if you're lucky, that's it. But they raise you, the way, like, respect alcohol, be mature about it, and be safe about it.
Mhm.
Obviously, we have some people. We had a family friend named Pete. he became a full-blood alcoholic
Mhm.
to the point like he had to drink every night. If he doesn't, in the morning he used to shake like this because he didn't drink. Once he had a
Yeah.
first sip,
Yeah, yeah, that withdrawal. Yeah.
yeah, and he was a foreman, in construction sites, and like I could not understand that. As growing up, and I see more people getting addicted to it, like this is a serious problem.
Yeah.
When they were talking about a while back, I don't know if you remember, brewing breathalyzers in cars. I
Yeah.
was supporting that actually. I think it's
Right.
a great idea.
Right.
This might get my Second Amendment right. No, it's not. If you're saving life, fuck the amendment right because you're saving a life.
Mhm.
And I'll explain that in a second why I say that too. I mean, this hits home for me very well. So I was very mature age drinking, very young age, and when people are like, "Oh, I want to get alcohol," like at kids, at parties, at the frat house, all that stuff, like I didn't care, to be honest with you. It didn't bother me. And people are like dousing beer, all this stuff, and I'm taking my time, like, yo, man, you're not drinking? Like, I actually am. I just know how to handle my alcohol and taste my beer,
Mhm.
or taste the alcohol. And like people, when I even go to a cigar lounge, just when I have a drink, glass, sniff it, taste it first. That's the first, it blooms out the flavors, and people look at me like, how the hell do you know that at a young age? Like,
Mhm.
grew up around this stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely I've seen a lot of culture that said it's introduced into the culture very early. And now it's interesting now the fact that you are Greek and are Greek Orthodox. Does the church have like an official position on alcohol consumption? Is wine with dinner okay, or having a beer
You're
once in a
going to
while?
laugh when I tell you this,
Mm,
because alcohol is very common in church, believe it or not. They
mm,
still use alcohol in the communion. They use raw alcohol. It was watered down with hot water, obviously,
mhm.
but it's very common to not very. It is normal to have communion because the wine, we believe it was the blood of Christ.
Right, right.
Yeah, in America they convert it to cranberry juice. Is it? Am I wrong, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, I know in my church we use typically grape juice. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not
Most,
it's
most
we don't.
99% of American churches use grape juice because
Mhm.
they're a little butthurt because it has a little alcohol in it,
Yeah,
and that's technically we're doing it wrong. It's wine. That is, if you look deep into the Bible, it says blood of Christ is wine. That's how you taught it, and
right.
the body was bread. So the reason the whole breathalyzer thing I sported, this is the time that my instructor passed, Master Wright.
Mhm.
But he didn't die at old age. He didn't die over a heart attack. He got died because a drunk driver hit him head on.
Mm,
He was leaving. Well, he owned at the time, I think it was 6 or 7 dojos, and he used to jump in. He had other instructors, stuff like that. And me and him used to joke around. We just had this conversation about a week ago. Me and him, we always keep in contact. He goes, keep up your studies, all this stuff. And he goes to me, when you can move back to New York and give you a dojo, I promise I'll take care of you. You're gonna make good money, bro. I'm like, and at the time, like, I didn't know if I want to move back to New York or not. I was like on the fence a little bit.
mhm.
And his son, who was one of my best friend, Shen, calls me. And he goes, "Hey, dude!" I'm like, "Hey, what's going on?" Blah, blah. Like, I'm like excited to hear his voice. I haven't talked to him in a while because I know he's a busy man, married, trying to pop the first baby out. Trying to get his girl pregnant and everything. His wife. And he goes, and I can tell something's wrong in his voice. Like, "Yo, what's up? You sound like your goddamn cat was run over by a truck." He goes, "I don't want to tell you this, so can you talk? Like, let me run outside. I have a smoke. Like, you're supposed to be smoking." He goes, "Hey, whatever." And I go outside. I excuse myself. I was working on a car at the time. But the mechanic goes, I don't want to tell you about my father died today. I
Oh,
thought they were pulling a practical jokes because we used
right,
to fuck with each other, stuff like stupid
right,
jokes.
right,
We were like, our jokes were like psychotic but funny for us.
right.
I'll put it this way: I chased him around the house with a fucking samurai sword, thinking I was his great, 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 great ancestor from China. I'm from Japan. I mean, in his samurai suit. That's how fucked up we were. And I go, like, dude, stuff, dude, that's not a fucking joke, man. And like, seriously, it's like, no, Pete, listen to me. He goes, my dad was leaving work like okay, your dad works every fucking day. Like, dude, like he never says work. He always says leaving the dojo. And so I knew something was wrong. He goes, okay, what happened? He goes, he was coming home from one of the dojos in actually Long Island. He goes, and a drunk driver hit him head on. The drunk driver was on the opposite lane, hit him head on. They used a jar of life, and by the time they ripped him out, it was too late. And they declared him dead at the hospital. I'm like, and the phone literally back then we had the Nextels, if you remember
Yeah.
It literally dropped out of my hands, and I wasn't shocked. I didn't believe it at first. So what I did was I got in my car after work. Like I should have left work immediately. That's the only thing I regret. I didn't leave work immediately, but I had to hold my composure because I needed to see this in my own eyes. I drove to New York and I knocked on his door and he opened the door. Like, he looked at me and goes, I'm not surprised you're here. He goes, come in. He goes, where is he? I'm like, you're fucking with me. I'm like, I literally looked at him. You're really fucking with me. I know he's alive. He's probably behind the door because the way his house was, the dojo was in the bottom, his front dojo, and he lived upstairs. And his wife, it was like a basement. They converted into an apartment and they pay rent or whatever. He goes, dude, this is not a joke. I saw his face. I was like, I know you're not joking, but I can't help it not to believe this.
Right.
Master Marie, his wife, comes out in tears, goes, and she just gives me the biggest hug ever, goes, we lost our father. We joke around saying like, he's a father I never had. And I just broke down. And I couldn't make the funeral because of work and stuff like that. It just fell on a Wednesday. And he understood. He was like, dude, don't worry about it. I get it. They wanted to keep it a very private ceremony. Only very close family members, not even students. He considered me as a son. Mm-hmm. But I was able to go to, they had a little like a drinking party kind of thing, like a life celebration kind of thing afterwards. Mm-hmm. I was able to go to, and I apologized. And Maria goes to me, listen, Pete, you work, you got your mom, you got your dad, you got your responsibility. I understand. And I know what he meant to you. And he left something behind for me. And I looked at him like, me? Why me? Because, dude, you were one of his best students. Like, his Shin was his best student. Like, honestly, no, you were. Shin was the best in his school, not denying that. She goes, but you were the best student because he had to be the best because that was his son. That's his bloodline. That's his sperm. You didn't have to do what you did. Help with promote school, do this, do that, everything.
Yeah.
And she goes and it just brings me something wrapped in paper. Mm-hmm. Goes, and I opened it. It was 3 swords. The samurai swords, the 3 sets. Mm-hmm. And it weren't real, but they were on his desk. Yeah. And I was just joking, why can't I have these? Why can't I have, like, I always joke as a little kid. Mm-hmm. I thought they were cool. And he passed it on to me. Wow. And that hit home so hard. Even that was like, thinking about it gets me emotional. Yeah. Yeah. Because
it's a major problem. Again, we're going to talk about that also.
Before we move on, one thing I want to say was, at 79 years old, the guy had ripped ass, muscles, everything. Mm-hmm. The only worst habit he had, he would smoke a cigar here and there. He did enjoy a 1,000 cigar. He had a drink here and there, but he was workaholic. I mean, he trained in the morning for himself. Mm-hmm. Trained with the kids. And I'm not talking about just teach. He trained with us. Right. He sparred with us. He did everything. So everything. Like, yeah, he had a temper and everything, but who doesn't anymore? Yeah. Yeah. And you wonder if he was still around, where would I be with him? You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Would I have my own school or what? It makes you question ifs. And that's what drives you crazy sometimes.
Yeah, and shout out to, I know Braxton, the Steak Fiend, Lost in Translation. Again, salute to you for being in the chat tonight. I know Braxton, he shared some personal, alcohol abuse, ran in one of my aunt's families, lost a few family members from it. And then, again, he's got another aunt of his who also died from a drunk driver back in 2008. So, again, certainly my sympathies for your losses in that time. So we're gonna delve a little bit into that. But I also, like I said, I want to keep this neutral in that again, I'm not saying that I oppose drinking. I just choose personally just not to do it. My wife really doesn't drink either. That's just a choice that we made, and it's interesting because we've been in different countries where alcohol is readily served and available, and we just chose not to drink, and people give us kind of funny looks because of that. But again, I don't judge other people, and what I would certainly like to know, I know my man Eric, he had shared earlier that a good friend that we both know, Ronnie, introduced him to quality ales over the wretched light American beers. So certainly, I would like to know. Too bad we can't have a poll here. I would like to know, for those who do drink. Again, I have no judgment for you whatsoever, but I'm curious in terms of what your beverage of choice. Are you a beer drinker? Do you like wine? If you like wine, shout out to Anissa, who certainly has been in the beer space. I know she would always have like a wine segment on that Talk Tuesday show on the BMU network. Are you into wines? Are you into the harder beverages? Or do you like the ales? I mean, what are you into? And I know beers, that's like a pretty broad category because you have beers from all over. You have American beer, or you have German beer, you have Japanese beer. Are you a frequent beer drinker, Pete, or are there certain types of
So
beers from different countries that you
yes.
like
So
better
the
than others?
short answer is yes. So before I want to answer that, and I'll get into that answer, I want to keep something in mind with everybody. I'm not against alcohol. I drink myself. I don't judge anyone who doesn't. I like when Paul told me he didn't drink alcohol. I didn't look him any fear way. I just like, oh, okay. Well, it is what it is. He's not the first or the last person I heard that. But what I will say, because I think it's personal, because I know somebody who passed, like he just told you guys, be cautious before you get behind the wheel. I personally, if I'm drinking, I'm not gonna drive. It's a rare occasion if I'm going to drive with a minimum of one beer. And I mean a minimum, nothing more than that. Because anything of that, I don't think you should be driving. That's my personal opinion. Now, with my drinking habits, if I'm not driving, I'll like I have a cocktail here and there. But when I am driving, and it's rare, I'm talking about like once in a blue moon.
Mhm.
I usually just walk down the block because all the bars are the same strip. I like a beer. American beer. My three top American beers are probably Yingling Lager, that is made in PA, believe it or not.
Mhm.
Not too far from my house. Second one is Heineken, and then I know that's not American beer. I think it's Switzerland. If I'm not mistaken.
Heineken. I thought that was German, but I could be wrong on
Might be
that.
German, yeah.
Yeah.
And the last one is on a nice hot summer. I like a crack open a Corona.
Mhm.
Now, Greek beer, I go for Athenos.
I was going to ask you about that because I don't
Yeah.
know if any Greek beers that are readily advertised or sold in America. So
Actually, I
didn't
can
know if
look it
Greek
up
had
right
its
now.
own in the market.
Yeah. So you cannot just buy it anywhere. You have to get it from like a Greek store, like oh, here it came up as the first picture, believe it or not. Here, let me share my screen really fast.
Sure thing.
There we go.
Yeah, let me look at
Ethos
that
is
up.
the
It
beer.
might be Dutch. It might not be German, but let me look that up.
So this beer, as you're pulling that up, you can get it in the States, but you have to find the place that sells it. It's very hard to find it. It is a lager, and nothing about these lager, they're not twist on. They actually have a pull tab. I think that's kind of cool. That's the only one that I ever seen have like that.
Mhm.
It's a nice smooth beer. It's something I like. And that's the only place I can find this beer is actually in Astoria, my stopping ground that we went to. Is the only Greek store sell it, like Titan or what's the other? Mediterranean. Those are the only two stores that I know. They're all legit run by Greeks, have Greek products. It's a Greek supermarket, pretty much. That's the only place I have it. I can't find it, and I usually get a case because it's like $80 a case. It's pricey. People say it's a little bit too much pricey. Yes, it is, but that's something I enjoy. And I'm not going to drink this every day. It's once in a blue moon I drink it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, like I said, keep coming in with it. So again, shout out to our Pain, Marriage, Politics, and Sports. Check out his own channel. He's doing some good things over there, as well as he's got a show here on the Black Man Unfiltered Network on Monday nights. Definitely check him out. Also, so again, he pretty much stopped drinking hard liquors. In I guess in his older age, and certainly a lot of people do make those changes as they get older. I know my man Lost in Translation, he's a wine connoisseur, and my man Anton, he's into a variety of different beverages and whatnot. So I just like to get an idea of what folks are into, and I know some people are very particular, especially with beer. German beer. Again, Heineken is a Dutch brand. And now the thing that's interesting about me growing up, in fact, it's one of those kind of um, I don't know, quirks about me or habits. I grew up in the 70s, right?
Mhm.
So again, in some of these brands, if you're Gen X, you may not hear these brands anymore, but brands like Schlitz or Lowenbrow or Michelob or Colt 45, all those brands from back in the day. And what really got me was, and again, I've never drank, but I have always been a fan of beer commercials. So again, if you go back to the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the beer companies in particular, they would put so much into the advertising. So if you talked about Budweiser Light, bring out your best. They always had some sports thing, bring out your best, Budweiser Light. Or my favorite one was weekends are made for Michelob. I mean, they had romantic themes. They had actors. If you go back, a lot of famous actors, they got their start with these beer commercials, and they always portrayed these beer commercials as especially with men in particular, that again, it was a manly thing to do, like hardworking American men. This Bud's for you. So they would show guys working on the skyscrapers. They're working, the police officers, they're doing their stuff. The thing is, you put in a hard day's work, and what's your reward at the end of the day? You get an ice cold Bud or something like that. And so those commercials,
Funny thing.
the jingles from those commercials, I used to memorize those and I would sing them. But I never had a desire to drink. But all those old school beers from back in the day, yep, Pabst Pabst Blue Ribbon. I'm right. If you go Route 1 north into Norton, across from the airport, yeah, Pabst, all those all those brands. But again, the way it was marketed was genius because it was associated with hard work and discipline and dedication, and you deserve it. And in class, especially some of the, like I said, the Lowenbrows and whatnot, that was like, or the Michelobs, that was class and sophistication. It wasn't for the everyday. These are high society type people. You had a Lowenbrow or Michelob in your hand. So I just loved all of that. But like I said, I never consumed.
Two things, Paul. One, my father was a Budweiser drinker, so I always broke his boat. Like, you're drinking water, buddy. Like, because I drink a little heavier beer than he does, because lager is a little heavier. Second, Colt 49 and what was the other one? Michelob, you said, right?
Court 45, Michelob.
Okay, those are two I want to hear.
Lowenbrow.
Colt
There's
40
probably a bunch I'm missing right
Yeah.
right now.
The Colt, they still make that actually. It's just really
Mhm.
hard to find. They're not as popular. Michelob, same thing. But the one beer I want to mention, and like most people, you probably know the story of this, is Olympus beer. Right? And people think it was Greek. It was not Greek. I think it was American or some shit like that. And that's where they got the idea, keyword, the idea for Mr. Olympia. They were sitting around the table drinking Olympics beer.
Right.
And that's where I was like, what are we going to name it? And I'm like going back and forth. And all of them, they looked at the bottle and goes, what about Mr. Olympia? And literally, they were drinking that beer. And the thing is hilarious how that beer created, a bodybuilding competition.
Yeah. Yeah, for real. And it is interesting how you get so that yeah, Miller beer, Old English, right? All those old brands like from the 60s, from the 70s, those commercials, especially since many of those beer advertisements were doing sporting events, baseball, football, basketball, all the commercials were around there. And like I said, the Budweiser, I think they probably did the biggest job in terms of, again, that whole bring out your best campaign, or this bud's for you. They really associated that with manhood or being a man. It was almost like a rite of passage that you would certainly have a beer at certain times. So so again, I appreciated the advertisements. The fact I still have like video clips. I got YouTube. I got a whole library, I think, of Lady Nouveau is not into the beer. So what are you into? You into your wines? You like your little mixed drink? You like a little scotch, a little bourbon? What are you into if you drink at all? I'm not,
Believe it or
again, no
not, Paul,
judgments here, but
a lot of women don't like beer. They usually hit the wine or a little heavier alcohol.
yeah.
From my experience, that is.
Yeah. I think there's like I said, all of those commercials were very male based, in part because again, what was on? It was a sporting event. So most of the time, you're gonna have the only ones, like I said, the Michelob, that was almost like a couple's beer, because all the commercials were about a man and a woman. They're in a nice restaurant or on a vacation or something. This has been such a beautiful weekend. I just love being here and I love being with you. And the music is playing very romantically in the back, and here they're sharing a Michelob. So that was definitely something that was, like I said, that the marketing campaigns that they did for beer advertisements, certainly here in the U.S. I can't speak for other portions of the world, but certainly it was a major thing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Beer's team with all major sports. And like I said, all those advertisements from back here. So Braxton saying down the South, chicks be having beers left and right. So yeah, so it's not a, yeah. That they got shots here and there. I feel you. Like I
So
said,
one thing I will remember with beer commercials, Greek commercials mostly. Most people are like at the beach, hanging out with their friends, having joking around. The Greek music is playing in the background, and they're cracking a beer and they're cheering the balls, clack, and they're chugging one down. But one thing I want to say with my military friends, that's how I got into lager. Is if anybody who's in the military knows they're drinkers, and I'm one of the few people who can keep up with them. I cannot out drink them. I can try and keep up with them. I learned my lesson the fucking hard way. And I got a story behind that in a minute why I said that.
Right.
So it's like all of them usually drink lager or Budweiser. I don't know what's with Budweiser. I think that's the thing is water.
Yeah.
But the reason I say about I learned my lesson the hard way. So my mom was in Greece. My dad was working in New York. I had a whole house myself. All my guys were back in from service and everything. And they go so we were throwing parties. It was only through the summer. And one of my guys, fucking Marines, of course, he goes, $100. He goes, you won't drink this whole glass of vodka. It was the beer pong ones, the red cups. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
He filled it to the rim. I go, oh, I can't drink this. Fuck you, Owen motherfucker. I'm like, you Marines cannot outdrink a Greek. I'm cocky. My chest is popping out. Like, I can knock you the fuck out, dude. He goes, let's see after you drink this. And go like, you got to do more than 100. We're going back and forth. We're drunk at this point, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So he dropped 500 fat ones. He goes, go ahead, pussy. I went like, okay, you're going to eat your fucking words, motherfucker. I take it. I go, cheer. Look. I drink it all. I go, and I threw the cup at him. Like, now what? He goes, 5, 4, 3. You hear me rolling? You get my breath. He goes, well, he actually beat everybody else's record. Like the record was like 3 minutes. I got to 1 at least. Mm-hmm. And like I looked down, I'm like, I'm gonna fucking kill you. Mm-hmm. He goes, well, here's the good news. You still get $500 because the bet with the other guys was you're not even gonna make it past 3. That's why I knew I was gonna drop 500. So you won the bet. I'm like, what? So ever since then, vodka and me do not get along. We are not friends anymore.
Have you had something like super hard, like an Everclear, like 190 proof, or any of those hard? I mean, those are like the
moonshine,
ones.
You mean?
Yeah.
Moonshine kind of scares me, to be honest with you, because I have heard story people going blind and that stuff, and I know it. And there's some moonshine that goes down very smooth. You don't get the burning sensation or anything like that. But if it's not made correctly, yes, it's true. I had talked to guys who do moonshine in the backyard, but they don't sell it. They do it for their own pleasure. It's nothing illegal for your own pleasure, but when you sell it, becomes a problem. But it scares me because even my buddy's father, who actually does moonshine, he goes, if it's not made correctly, because the first head, the top of it, you have to discharge it, because that is where you hear people going blind and going, because it's too much alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing with moonshine, there's no standard to make it, and coaches, right? Yeah, Everclear, that's like that almost as pure alcohol as you can get. Like I said, 190 proof, 95% alcohol. So that stuff, I mean, you put a match to it, it's gonna like flame up. So it's definitely different. But yeah, moonshines again. Everybody has their own, kind of brews and whatnot. Obviously, me being from the South, very familiar with moonshine, and people made their own distilleries and things of that nature. So yeah, it's definitely it's a different thing. But yeah, you can never trust what certainly is being offered, and people would make their own grain based brews, and certainly certainly they would have that. But yeah, but certainly as people come in, your drinks of choice. Do you like that whole thing with the tequila with the lime and the salt, and eat the lime with the salt and then take the shot or whatever? You guys into that? I mean, I'm just just yeah, see, there you go. Grey Goose, smooth tequila, smooth Hennessy. Yeah, see, you
Before
got
we
that
move on
out
to the
there.
next topic, I was going to say, my buddy who his father made moonshine, he did apple pie, he did all this different composition. And my buddy goes, listen, I am not trust anybody's moonshine but my father. So I've been drinking for years, and he felt comfortable, and that's fine. I was just scared shitless of it. I know some moonshine big names who used to do it in backwoods in the West. Now actually legalized, and they actually are having a whole facility and stuff like that. One of the guys from Moonshine, the show, he was illegal for years, and now he has a whole thing going on, a whole business.
Yeah, yeah. Lost translation. People from the South make their own alcohol and grape from scratch. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I mean, that's always something. Yeah, loves the moonshine and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely it's definitely part of the not obviously American culture, but again, it's a global product. And so I just did a little research prior to, and I just wanted to kind of share some of the information that I found. So typically, by age bracket, in terms of, so you have beer, wine, straight liquor, mixed cocktails and drinks. So don't have an opinion on it. So men typically are more, as you said earlier, men typically drink more beer than women. Probably those with higher incomes tend to also, well, I say middle class, because again, that's how it was formulated. If you again go back and look at those Budweiser commercials, it was all about hardworking, blue collar guys. So if you're middle income between again 50 and 100K, you would kind of more so a beer drinker. But again, the more more income or more affluent you were, you may steer more towards the wines and those type of brews. The minority is obviously the straight liquor, so the hard liquors like the vodkas or the bourbons and those things, and then the mixed cocktails. I think certainly, obviously, with women, I think Lady Naveau was making that point earlier. That certainly is definitely a case. So so it goes across the board, and but it really doesn't matter that much. What I notice here, really, between millennials and boomers, there's really not a lot of difference in terms of consumption. Although certainly millennials, they may be much more into the the straight shots than the boomers. So just like our pain was saying earlier, yeah, when you get older, you may start to realize that, yeah, maybe I need to lay off the heavy stuff and tone it down a
Oh,
little
do me a
bit.
favor. Highlight Eric's last comment about sake.
Let's see. Sake is, yeah. Sake is
So
also nice. That's that's obviously I don't know too many people who drink it like regularly. I think tonight we're talking generally about
I was going to say about
yeah,
sake because Master Ray was half Japanese, so he used to get it imported all the time.
yeah,
And if you get a really good sake, it's actually very sweet. You don't realize how sweet it is.
yeah,
And you drink it warm. I remember the first time I'm drinking, I was at a what's called hibatsi. And I'm drinking it, Shin, me and Shin were celebrating. We got our black belts. He got his second. I got my first degree. And I'm like, we're going down. We're both underage at this point, right?
yeah.
And he goes, dude, chill with sake. And I'm like, yo, fuck you. It's not that bad, dude. You make it like a big deal. I'm like, you're gonna regret those fucking words. And we had our girlfriends with us at the time. We were young. Boom, boom, boom. And I get up like, whoa. He goes, you're drunk. No, like, oh, I threw my keys, and my girlfriend goes, you're driving my car. Like, you're gonna actually trust me? I don't have a fucking choice at this matter. I'm in no condition to drive. and it hits you like a ton of bricks. You don't realize that as you're eating, drinking, you're having fun. Cheers, whoop, cheers, whoop, cheers, whoop. And with the second guy comes out, he's squirting sake in my mouth. Obviously, watered down a little bit.
Yeah.
But
Especially if you go to like hibachi restaurants or whatnot, they use it to cook with a little bit, but they're not.
Yeah,
I don't know. If it's
you
like
don't realize, but there are two different kinds of. It's technically whiskey, but they're two different kinds. The sake kind and a regular Japanese whiskey is made the same way as in America, just a little, with made in Japan. And that one is actually more expensive than sake. The bottle can go up to like $200-$300 to get imported here.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you want the genuine product, you're definitely going to pay a premium for that. And again, that's why, I don't think it's as generally consumed as certainly more readily available beers. But shout out to Bragg. Braxton's into like a lot of the hard stuff. So he's into the Hennessy. He's got the gin. He's got all those. He's got all those things down. So so shout out to him. Get our hands around some gin. Comedian Lonell, yeah, I think I remember hearing that. And then obviously again, so Anton, whiskey, Johnny Walker Black, yeah. So he's definitely he's into that as well. And sorry, I'm trying to pull your skin off. Shout out to Lost as well. But yeah,
I guess he had a bad experience with sake. That means.
But yeah, it's like I said, it's like anything else. If you're not used to it, anybody, because most guys, I remember when I was in college, most guys who had beer, they just threw up the first time they had it. But they, I guess they just kept
never
going
threw up with
until
it.
they got used to it. Yeah.
The only alcohol that made me throw up, it was like those goddamn Marines again, and it filled it all the way to the rim, and had to bet me $500. Hey, I'm never gonna say no to $500.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cross my stomach, but that's always I'm sorry.
I hear you. So this is generally the consumption. This I think is based more so on US statistics. So in terms of dollars spent, again, 81% of respondents spent less than $10 on a six-pack compared to 19% who spent over $10 worth. With liquor results, it was the opposite. 18% spend less than $25 a bottle on liquor compared to 82% who spent more. So again, premiumization is in. So again, it's definitely for those who are more affluent. Generally going to go by that. With wine, not so much. 75% is less than $15 per bottle, while just 20% is over 15. Question for the panel: if you've had a very expensive bottle of wine, like have you had a bottle of wine that was well over $100 a bottle? I'd be curious. And do you notice the difference? I mean, because again, I know wine is a big thing with some people. People are wine connoisseurs. Does a $15 bottle of wine, is it that much better than a $500 bottle of wine, something aged from 1879 or whatever? Like I said, I don't know. I don't have a reference. But for someone who's had that, if you've gone on wine tastings to California, Napa Valley and all that, and go to those kind of deals, does that price point make a difference? The higher the cost is generally a better product. Last here, it says let me go back. That last stat, the most popular styles of beer were lagers at 45%, ambers 41%, and 41% ales. In wine, it was Chardonnays at 57%, Merlots and Zinfandels 56%, with liquor, vodka, and tequila both at 62 and 55%. So certainly people definitely tend to have theirs. Lady in the Boy says yes, there's some difference, and but at the same time, she says she likes her cheap bottles of
Let me jump in
wine.
here for a second, Paul.
Yeah.
So I had a buddy of mine. His father had a wine cellar, and the guy was, in corporate America. He did really well for himself, and this is when life was a little cheaper than before this.
Sure.
Anyway, and I remember he showed me around. Like, I didn't know anything about wine. I was asking questions. I was interested. So he cracked open one of those older wines he had. I think it was 1971 it was. And he cracked it open, and you taste the difference how it was aged. But you have to make sure you keep it in the right store. Humidity,
it has to be the right temperature, and it has to be
cigars.
Yeah.
Same thing with cigars. You have to keep them at 70% humidity. Like, maybe not like that, but you get the idea. You have to keep it at, from X1Z number to this number. It has to be in a dark room, all this stuff. I'm like, man, this is a lot of fucking work for goddamn wine bottles. He had one from his great grandfather, and he never opened it. I'm like, can you still drink that? Like, technically, yes. He goes, as long as you can keep it, where the temperature needs to be, you're safe.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, question: when you drink beer, because I know Anton, he made a comment earlier that in Europe, and we're going to get in some slides talking about Europe in a minute, that there they tend to drink their beers warm. Are you more a warm beer drinker? Or you like it ice cold? I mean,
Everybody that I had beer with is always been cold.
Yeah.
In Greece. And I believe it or not, like here, most women graduate to wine or anything like that. Everybody drinks beer in Greece.
Mm-hmm.
Beer and wine is two alcohols you're not going to not try. You might have a different flavor. I might like a Heineken. You might like a Budweiser, like a loser, but that's a whole different story. But my point is, like, we all drink it. Now, even the American beers are in Greece too now. So if I want a lager, I can go to a bar. Like, yo, do you have lager? He goes, yeah. And I looked at him like, really? Yeah. Oh, sweet. Can I get one? And you're like, yeah. And there's only things you want a bottle or you want a glass. All of them come in bottles because they don't have draft.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a loss. Like I said, I find that interesting, but I have heard that in the past. It's just a different culture in terms of how they consume their beer there. Now, same thing in Greece. It's typically cold.
Let me put a light on this situation.
Mm-hmm.
Irish beer is usually drink warm. A black, like a Guinness is cold here, but Guinness in Ireland, maybe pronounce that Ireland or whatever.
Ireland.
Drink it. My buddy, we call him the Irishman. He drinks his beer warm when he gets, not like hot warm, just room temperature.
Yeah.
And I looked at him like, dude, that is nasty. He goes, no, this is how it is in my country because my country is mostly cold all year round. Because for you, that is for me is comfortable. Like this will be like today's weather will be hot for him over there.
Yeah.
So that is normal for him to drink like that.
Yeah.
And I thought that was weird at first. I tried.
Yeah, but it kind of makes sense. I mean, if in a cold climate, having something warm, so that makes sense. Plus, the alcohol is probably going to warm you up a little bit as well, and whatnot. And now again, I know my man Eric. I know he's into a lot of the older stuff. So I don't know if you have had meads, pearl wines. Now again, that's like it's like either you love it or hate it. So those old style meads and whatnot, definitely when you go to the Renaissance festivals, they will have those type of beverages there. But yeah, that's like ancient beverage that you got to go to certain places in order to get that kind of product. But we move on to the slides here. So again, drinks of choice. I'm gonna have to blow this up a little bit so I can see it a little bit better. So again, this chart here of Europe talks about the different drinks. So again, beer heavily consumed, like I said, Germany, obviously, and those kind of Slavic countries, Spain, Finland. Wine is more France, and it kind of makes sense. France, Portugal, where wineries are there. Italy, a lot of the things there. But then once you start getting further east, and talk about Russia and again the spirits. Again, the more hard liquors tend to be generated from there. This is coming from the World Health Organization in terms of where they like to, again, consume their products. So as you were saying earlier, wine is heavily consumed in Greece. Now, again, is wine grown in Greece? So they have wineries and
yeah, I actually been to a factory that actually made wine. And believe it, they do it the old school way. You know what the old school way is, right, Paul?
No, I do not. Explain it to me.
Step on the grapes with bare feet.
Oh, really? With the lady with the little.
There were guys there when I went on a field trip, and when I saw them literally, washing their feet, they're rolling their sleeves up, the legs up. I'm like, I went to my teacher, like, they're not going to. Yes, there are, and you're stepping on the wine. I'm like,
the only time I ever saw that, showing my age here, I Love Lucy. They did like a European tour, and Lucy got into the wine vat or whatever and was stepping around. She got into a fight with somebody in the wine. That's my only reference to that. Like I said,
I seen it live. Literally,
yeah.
I was a kid, and it was mind blowing. I didn't think they would do that anymore. I thought a machine come down, crush it, whatever. But no, there were literally 4 to 5 guys stepping on them. I'm like, wow.
Yeah. See, I mean, certain things is like, see, if you don't want to, harmless compromise. If you want, some things you just don't need to know. I mean, knowing if you knew that someone's feet were in a vat crushing your grapes for your wine or whatever, would you be more or less likely to to drink it at that point? I don't know. It's like hot dogs. You're probably better off not knowing how they're made more so
I still
than
drink wine now. I don't care.
more so than that. Yeah. Some people,
It's fine with me.
again, back in the day, especially, had more sensibilities about that sort of thing. But I don't know now. People are definitely more anal about, where stuff has been and again how stuff is made, and people kind of get sort of
That makes me
geeked.
laugh, Paul.
Yeah.
Because back in the day, people did a lot of crazy shit. Didn't eat this, didn't do this, and now they're all germaphobes, the allergies. Like, million of years, we never had this shit. Now all of a sudden, all this stuff is coming out.
Yeah. It's a different. It's a different thing now. Everyone's so anal about again what's in their food. So, and
Correct.
again, you should pay some attention to that stuff. But I think sometimes people take it to overkill. Here, just in terms of the world alcohol consumption. So again, the 10 countries with the highest alcohol consumption: Czech Republic, Latvia, Moldova, Germany. So again, a lot of these countries in Europe, certainly they're very high on their alcohol. Again, the spirits, as we said in the last slide, very much into the Eastern Bloc, so to speak. Russia and those countries around, but also in Asia and India, also very high on spirits. Beer seems to be a North American thing. Again, we didn't even talk about Canadian beers. I think Arpane mentioned like Molson Golden beers, but certainly that's definitely seems like a North American thing. Not as much in Africa, and I got a couple slides I'll be showing a little bit later. Like, you don't hear a lot about alcohol consumption or certainly alcoholism in Africa, except for this lower portion of the continent. But certainly, so how people consume it, the types of beverages that people consume is going to differ by region. And that's not to say that obviously all of these things are available in most of these countries. Now, here, the 10 countries with the lowest alcohol consumption, a lot of these are Islamic countries. So again, I don't know in Islam. I'm sure, like just like in Christianity or Judaism, I'm sure drunkenness, I'm sure, is something that's looked at as a sinful behavior, or certainly not a good practice of behavior. But to the extent that people just abstain from drinking or consuming alcohol in general,
So I'm
seems to
gonna
be
push
something
back on
that
that
you
a
would
little
see
bit.
in a lot of Islamic countries. Go ahead.
So, do you remember Hashim, who used to come on my channel where we used to
Yes.
first
Yes.
launch the Hangout operation?
Yes.
So he's Muslim, and me and him had several conversations about stuff. So one conversation, I was working with another guy named Saeed, piece of guy, racist completely. I mean, if you were not his people, you
Mhm.
were anti-devil. He's not.
Right.
Anyway, and I asked him, "Yo, Hashim, like, what is your religious belief behind alcohol and smoking?" He goes, "Technically, we're not supposed to have it neither. It is a sin even to have a sip." He goes, "But I drink. I like my beer. I'm going to enjoy my beer. I'm not going to stop drinking. I sin. Oh, well, that's my only pleasure in life." He goes, "Some people smoke and whatever. If this is my only pleasure, I'll do it. I don't care."
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's going to be, it's an individual thing. That's why I asked you earlier about the church, about the Greek Orthodox Church. Now, I know you said they used alcohol in obviously communion and in church
Mhm.
services, wine and whatnot, but I'm talking about, do they have general prohibitions? Because especially here in America, you got some, getting some hardline Christian churches here that abstain. And now I know, like Mormons, for example, not only you can't drink coffee or tea, you can't consume caffeinated products, let alone
Oh,
alcoholic
God.
ones. And
You're going to
so,
meet a pissed off Greek without caffeine. You're
right.
going to
So I'm
fucking
just
piss off the
saying,
wrong
that's
person.
why I was asking you if the Greek Orthodox Church has like an official position on like, is alcohol in moderation? Is that okay? Is that something that,
Yeah, I have seen priests drink beer.
Yeah.
I know Father Cosatino. I really haven't asked him if he drinks, but I know he's not a big fan of smoking. I know that.
Right.
But never seen. One priest was his name was actually Father Panayotis, like under my name Panayotti, and and I see him with a cold beer in his hand, drinking and enjoying it. I see him at a coffee shops having coffee. I know some priests smoke actually too, so they're pretty open, I believe, with that.
Yeah. Moving on here again, top wine drinking countries. So again, Eric was asking about Belgium. So again, Portugal, top wine country in the world, 51. So over half the population there drinks wine. France, Italy, Switzerland. So you see here all the countries where wine is consumed on a regular basis. But again, if you look to the right, like I said, North America generally is much more beer. Beer drinking seems to be dominant, whereas in Europe, wine seems to be more dominant. And going to the point that you made earlier about the wine, I also see that wine is more widely given to kids than I do beer. Like I don't see even today, and maybe some of the guys correct me if I'm wrong. When was the first time you had beer? Did your uncle, your father give you a beer at 8 years old or whatever? But people are okay to give you like a glass of wine or a little wine or whatever with dinner at a younger age. Because again, also you typically don't drink as much. Like you hear about these guys going to like a six. What's the most beers you ever drank? Like
Most
six pack. Like you
when I was younger or now?
Yeah.
That's a better question.
Well, when you were young, the most you ever, most ever.
A case and a half.
Case and a half of beer. You're not going to typically do that with wine, right? Like wine isn't meant necessarily to be consumed unless you have a drinking problem. Yeah, you may have like a glass of wine with dinner or something like that, but wine in general is consumed in smaller quantities than beer. Beer is like drinking like a Coke or water. I mean, for some people, it's like they drink beer at just as much as they consume water. If you look at it overall, so I think just the beverage itself is different in terms of its consumption treating compared to beer, which is like I said, you can have unlimited number of beers, but definitely that's a dad let him get a sip around 5. Now was that beer or was that wine? What was the beverage lost? Because I'm curious, I don't see that as much of that with the beer than I do with the wines.
I think most people let you have wine because one is it is healthier for you, believe it or not, because they say it's good for your heart. They say. I never asked a doctor, to be honest with you, so I'm maybe talking a little bit on my ass.
Yeah, I've heard that. Plus the grapes, antioxidants from the grapes and whatnot, and the phytonutrients from the grapes and whatnot. So I've heard that that taking them out, and I've known people who swear like people have been like living into their 90s. And they've been asked, it's like, what's your secret for being able to live so long? And they would talk about, every day I have a shot of bourbon and a little something or whatever. So they, for some people, they swear that alcohol, again, in small, moderate amounts, does give you a health benefit over time. Like I said, I've just never, allowed myself to be open to that. But I have heard, just as you've heard. Certainly, I've heard that being offered as a reason. And again, yeah, definitely with Lost, Pabst Blue Ribbon. Yeah, that's an old brand. Again, that's a 60s, 70s brand. So definitely, we're going back to the you don't see that brand advertised as much anymore. But those are the commercials that I grew up on.
I'm going to throw a little gem here for most people. Obviously, everybody knows I'm a beard guy. I love beards. I had long beard, short beard, skinny beard, whatever you want to call it. So here's a little trick if you try and grow your beard. This is shout out to Dan C. If anybody knows about Dan C. Bearded, go check his channel. He has everything about beards. And I looked into it. This is facts. So if you're trying to speak, beer is actually the yeast, I believe, is it? Yeah, the yeast in it is actually very healthy for your beard hairs. And it actually makes it grow stronger. I'm not saying crack one every day. Goes, yo, this is for Ghost of Sparta. Cheers. Good. No. I'm not saying that. Right. But I'm saying it's good. And the second fact is actually a man who drink beer at least once or twice a week actually have less chances of having heart conditions. Because it is a decompressor, like, oh, I'm having a nice cold beer, maybe a cigar, or just bullshitting at with your friends at the bar with shooting some pool. It's something to relax with. And there's studies proven out there. You can check it out. You don't believe me?
Yeah,
on both facts.
Yeah. So definitely a lot of people, like I said, they swear by it, and not nothing to not believe that. So here, back in 2019, again, frequency of alcohol consumption in Europe. So again, every day, 8% every day. Most people drink it weekly, some people every month, and some people less than 12 months. So pretty spread out about the board. Interesting here, as you said earlier, males definitely seem to consume more alcohol than females. Do you have like a bias towards that if you see a woman who not necessarily an alcoholic, but someone who drinks like a lot of beer, does it change your image or perception of her? Like again, is
No,
drinking more
actually,
so a man thing, or does are you more attracted to that if a woman likes her, likes to have a look? Are you more attracted to that if she drinks a bit more,
I
or is
don't
that
have
the same
any
level that you
shape,
do?
way, or form or feelings behind that because it's. I grew up with it. I had seen women drink beer. I see people like my mother is not a drinker, to be honest with you guys, because she, even she's a very, very, very lightweight. A shot glass of beer would get her tipsy and drunk and singing. The last time she had a beer, she was singing and coning, and she wants her mommy. And I was like 8 years old, like looking at her like, what's wrong with her?
Mhm.
Like she doesn't, she doesn't drink. She might have a little sip of a wine. Most times, if I'm having a drink and she spurges every few years, she might take a quick little sip out of my beer and just go cold, and that's it. She's good after that. And that's what she
Mhm.
needs.
Yeah.
Now, I don't feel any shape away from a woman has a strong drink, a beer, wine. I don't have a feeling because I grew up around it. Like it's to me, it's like walking down the street. That's how
Mhm.
normal it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, shout out to Lois. If she drinks what I drink, it's actually, yeah. I mean, obviously, it's not awkward. Um, knowing that you guys can go kind of go and enjoy that, beverage together. But I remember women used to be kind of turned off a little bit by me because again, I would say, look, I take her out and I'll be like, look, have a drink if you want to. Like I said, I wasn't so anal about it that I just let people know that, look, I don't drink, but I was like the perfect designated driver or whatever. It's like I never judged you based on your alcohol consumption, but it can get kind of weird where if someone drinks and you don't, it can get a little awkward if people have their impressions of you because of that. So I remember in my dating process, I went through some of that as far as the perception of whether or not you drank or not, and how that person felt, because then it's like, oh, like I feel like a lush, like I'm an alcoholic around you or whatnot. And like I said, I never tried to give people that impression. So Antos, I remember one woman in the army who can drink a few guys under the table. Yeah, I mean, if you met someone like that, is that the woman of your dreams, Pete, or is that someone
No,
you
I'm
need to
good.
stay away from?
I'm good. I'm good because they can probably kick my ass. I don't want a woman can be able to kick my ass. Fuck that. But no, I know a bunch of veterans, women veterans who can drink most men under the table. I'm like, shit, what the fuck you guys put in this shit? Like, I'm like looking like and like crazy. But one thing I want to mention is, I know this might be not an appropriate comment, but most Latinos love to drink. I realize
Mhm.
from my experience. I'm not saying it's everybody. Keep
Right,
that in mind. I'm not saying
right,
all Latinos drink and they're alcoholic. No, 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 no. I'm not saying that.
right.
What I'm saying, I have realized a lot of my Latino friends like have a drink at least 2, 3 times a day.
Yeah.
Three times, 3, 4 times a week. I'm sorry
You
about
know
that.
the guys who I really seen it in, again, as a community, and I've been to like different parties or groups with that. One is Filipinos.
I can
The
see that.
Filipino men, in particular, yeah, alcohol consumption is pretty high with those guys. And then also with some of the Caribbean folks, like folks from Trinidad or Guyanese. Like I remember one time my daughter, she had a friend of hers who was Guyanese, and they were Guyanese Indian. And I went over to the house, they had a party or whatever. They invited her, and then obviously we were invited to the party. And again, all the guys would be in the basement and they were just drinking. And so they offered me a drink. And again, I got the stares. I said, I'm sorry, I do not drink. Thank you very much. And again, you just got like all these eyes just kind of just bearing down on you. It's like, who is this guy?
One thing I realized about a Guyanese Indian is actually today, believe it or not,
Mm.
is there are heavy drinkers. Some of them are also alcoholics, very hard alcoholics. They need their drink at least every night before they go to bed or relax. Um, that tells you something about their culture.
Yeah.
Is it always like that, or is it a new trend there, or is it something we're just discovering lately because they're not as popular in the States
Yeah, yeah.
as,
I
like,
said the
say,
only guys I haven't seen where a lot of alcohol is consumed is like Africans. I've been to different African parties. Not a lot of beer or alcohol. Certainly not hard alcohol being passed around in those settings. And obviously, if you've gone to some like again conservative Christians, generally don't see, at least out in public anyway. They may have their own private collection or something, but they don't necessarily put it out there for for consumption. But yeah, when we went to Caribbean, yeah, like I said, we went to Jamaica. It was almost like a running gag. My wife and I went to Jamaica a couple of years ago, and the first place we had a tour guide. He was taking us around and whatnot, and everywhere we went, they offered us some rum. Everywhere we went, and we would say, sorry, we don't drink. And it was like the same look. Like if I could just capture it, it was like a running gag. My wife and I had to kind of stop from laughing a little bit because again, we got the same thing. It's like, what are you in Jamaica for if you're not here to be drinking? And so so that's something that very much so that is part of the culture there. So yeah, so absolutely, I've definitely seen that. But here now we're going to kind of get again with Africa. So again, like I said, I didn't find a lot of countries in Africa that had a lot of drink. If you look at that previous map, alcohol really isn't consumed in large quantities, by the light colors in Africa, except for this sort of lower panel here, and it's reflected in these countries here. Again, Tanzania, Burkina Faso, South Africa, Uganda, but it's not like Nigeria. I didn't find. I have to ask Black David about that one. Nigeria isn't a place where you see a lot of alcohol consumption, which is a little bit surprising to me. But it's definitely not something. And even the numbers themselves, they're under 10, pretty low overall compared certainly to other countries where alcohol is consumed in much larger quantities. But here I want to get more into the nitty gritty in terms of where I really want to go tonight was again alcoholism by country, and this kind of was pretty eye opening for me in terms of the numbers that you see. So obviously, the darker the color, the higher. So if you look at Russia, just overall, well over 22% of the country, they have the highest alcoholism like in the world. United States is up there, in the blue colors, and obviously the if you look at Africa overall, less than 10% across the board in terms of alcoholism in the country. That's not to say Africa doesn't have its other problems, but alcoholism isn't something that seems to be one of them. So I just find it interesting that the two basically global superpowers, if you will, right? I mean, as far as military arsenals and whatnot, they're like the largest, but they also have the highest incidence of alcoholism. So I just find that interesting. This coming from World Population Review, again, alcoholism by country. And so I'm just wondering, how ironic that is that these nations that have so much power, so much military might, and yet these countries tend to be the ones, or certainly those tend to be the ones with the highest alcohol problems. Here, again, also from the same stat, countries with the most alcoholism. So Hungary, Russia, Belarus, Latvia, and the United States. Certainly not to the same level, but again, these are like developed nations. But the alcoholism is high. I actually highlighted Greece. Greece has a relatively low incidence of alcoholism. And again, could that be in part because it's introduced to the culture at a much earlier age? Only 6.1% total, 9.4% men, 2.9% women. Are women also encouraged to drink in Greece the way men are? Like, are they? Yeah.
Yes, because now they finally introduced a drinking age, and it was like first it was like 15, then it went to 16, then it went up. I think that right now, last time I checked, was 18 for smoking and drinking. But it's still kids still drink at home.
Yeah.
Parents, kids still give them. Like I remember going across the street to the little concession store, and they sell alcohol there too. Not heavy
Yeah.
alcohol, beer only.
Right.
And bringing home bags of beer and cigarettes and everything was selling there. So it
Right.
was common for me.
Right.
It's
Right.
so people were like making a big deal. Oh, we need to go drink. Come on, dude, let's go. I'm like, I didn't give a shit
Yeah.
because it was
And
so
it's just interesting too, like here in the country, like different states or different parts of states seem to have different rules. Like, I mean, here there's Costco's in this area where you can go and buy alcohol. Like they have like I know the Costco in Edison, they got like a full winery, like a separate area completely for alcohol, where most Costco locations that I frequent do not. You also have in this country what they used to call dry states, like on Sundays. Again, a Lost or some of the guys who live in the South, correct me if I'm wrong, if this is still a policy that on Sundays it was considered a dry state or a dry day where you couldn't buy
I
alcohol
think that's
on
not a thing
Sundays.
anymore.
Yeah, I remember back in the 80s and 90s, I remember that being a thing because I used to go down there quite a bit. I don't know if it's still the same way as it was before. But again, yeah, like vodka, like water over there. But yeah, all kinds of spirit drinks that they have there. But definitely, I want to know from like I said, those guys, if in the South, do they still have those periods where you cannot buy alcohol on Sundays? I'm just curious if that's still
What was weird for me when I moved out of New York to PA was went to the gas station because everywhere in New York sells beer, at least. You know what I'm saying? Every
Right.
gas station I ever been into, at least.
right.
And even 7-Elevens. And I walked into one, and we were at Walmart, me and my mom. And my mom goes, "Let's get a case of beer for you and your father." Again, I was young, but I was allowed to drink in the house. I went like, "That's a great idea." And we're looking at where we can find it. So I asked the lady who worked there. Goes, "Excuse
Yeah.
me, can you tell me where your beer is?" Like, she goes, "You're probably not from around here." It goes, "No, we'll give it away." She goes, "You're asking for beer. Instead of PA, you cannot buy alcohol in the supermarket. They just
Yeah, it's like
recently
different.
changed
Yeah,
that. Now
it's
you can buy alcohol in the States, but you have to, cash out a different register. You cannot be cashing out with your groceries. You have to pay for alcohol then before you show up. Same thing with
yeah,
gas stations.
yeah. But it's just different how it, like I said, ranges. Like how certain Costco's, for example, sell alcohol and certain ones don't, even if it's in the same state. And I don't know, do some apply for liquor licenses or
That's what
whatever?
it is.
Like I
A
don't.
legal
Yeah,
license. That's what it
yeah.
is.
So it's
Because
just interesting that it doesn't apply across the board, that you have to go to certain ones in order to get that. But I know of two Costco's. Is another one going up in North Plainfield that also, they have an alcohol section where you can buy stuff from. But yeah, but if anyone if Lost or Braxton in the South, are you allowed to buy alcohol on Sundays? I just want to
I'll put
see
this, Paul.
if that's still a policy.
When I
But
was more of a
yeah,
contractor chef,
yeah,
helping people set up their restaurants and dine and stuff like that, and I always tell them, get an alcohol license. I never realized how expensive those fucking things are.
oh yeah,
And they're
because
only
it's the most
limited in
lucrative. I mean, think about it. How much are you going to charge for a drink? Like, you buy a bottle of rum or whatever, and how much you're going to sell that per shot. So again, it's a cash cow. So it's like, well, look, if it's going to be a cash cow, then we want our cut also. So I can certainly understand, and I know a lot of restaurants as well that you may start out without that liquor license, but once you get that liquor license, that opens up an entirely new market, certainly to you and your product. So if you're going to open up a restaurant, even if you may not be a big supporter of drinking, just from a business perspective, it's generally good to have that so that you can. And I've known guys who had restaurants it took them years to get that liquor license, and but once you have it,
Actually,
your profitability or potential for profits goes up dramatically, even if you do hire bartenders and just different types of people to serve up. But again, you look at the beer you get from the tap and whatnot. I mean, that's watered down pretty much. So again, you're making money hand over fist. Just with the alcohol, you might be making more from the alcohol than you are the food. So
actually, the tap is not watered down. It comes straight from the tap, from a keg. Now there are bars that I know, like is a hibachi bar around here.
mhm,
Shimi, something like that. They water the drinks down. I've been there a couple of times, and I had a sip. I like my
right.
cocktail, like, and I looked at it. I looked at the bartender and go, I posted back like, how about you pour me a real drink now without the watering down?
Mm.
And they looked at me like, and they started whispering, and a man comes up to me like, I'm like, I've been in the restaurant business all my life. I know when I taste a well down alcoholic drink.
Yeah.
5 minutes later, they bring me and then take a sip out of this. I'm like, yep, that's how it's supposed to drink.
Yeah.
Like when you're in the business, in the restaurant business, you know when somebody's ripping you off very easily. Simple.
Yeah, for sure. But this last slide I had here, again, because we didn't even introduce drunk drive. I know Braxton. Again, my apologies again for your losses. So into alcoholism and drunk driving, but these are the stats from 2022. 13,524 people were killed in drunk driving crashes. And keep in mind, we were just coming out of COVID at that time, so you figure you didn't have like a ton of people. You know, the road started to get filled up again back in 2022, but 37 people die in drunk driving crashes. That's one person every 39 minutes. All right, so again, it's certainly is one of the leading killers of Americans is drunk driving, and obviously the campaign is, you know, drunk driving is buzz driving is drunk driving. But again, I've grown up with drunk anti-drinking ads my whole life. I think Braxton made the point earlier, in the 20s we had prohibition, and that really didn't work too well. All it did was it just led to the rise of the mob, and you know, that whole thing. So, you know, people always found a way to get around it. And, you know, when I grew up, you had like Mad Mothers Against Drunk Driving and all those anti-drinking ads and whatnot, even though it, like I said, it was a contrast, because like I said, you had all of those Bud commercials and Michelob commercials and Lowenbrow commercials where drinking was just as American as apple pie itself. And that there's nothing better than a guy having a drink, especially after a hard day at work, the way it was pitched. But then, like I said, in the 80s, you had the Mothers Against Drunk Driving campaigns and the anti-alcohol ism ads and things like that. That was kind of going at the same time. But it's almost like you're kind of fighting a losing battle here, because on one side you're saying, hey, this is a great thing to do, and then on the other side, you know. So again, how does one find the maturity to find the balance to say, look, to drink within moderation is something that it seems like for a lot of people, unfortunately, that they can't find that balance, and that you become a essentially, you know, a victim, essentially of yourself by, you know, being consumed by. Like I said, my dad, again, he was a very, well, the biggest problem with him, because the thing is, if he didn't have it, it wasn't like he was going to go crazy if he didn't have it. I know it later in his life, because I got to a point where I just refused to buy him alcohol, and I was, you know, but he didn't complain. He's like, if he had it, his problem was if he had it, he drank it. So his drink of choice was Smirnoff vodka, and if he had a pint of it, he would drink the pint. If he had a fifth of it, he would drink the fifth. No cabinet, take a drink, put it away in the cabinet or whatnot. He'd always kept it sort of near his near the table. And he just, once he got started, he just didn't know how to control himself when he was around it. But if you took it away from him, which, you know, like I said, later in life when I had to start taking care of him, it wasn't like he would fight me and says, I need a drink. He wasn't like that. He was almost like what we call like a functioning alcoholic to an extent. He would be able to drive. He would drive to work, but he never got a drunk driving ticket or anything. He could function at a very high level, inebriated, which I never understood, but he was just able to make it go. But like I said, sometimes he would get sloppy with. So again, he was definitely a major influence on me in terms of my drinking. Because one thing, and I've heard different people say, is alcoholism, is it hereditary? And just looking at my family, seeing how alcohol has affected different parts of my family, part of it was I never wanted to put myself near it. And so I didn't even want to try that, to say, oh yeah, I can handle it, it won't affect me or whatever. Like I said, I just made a conscious choice that I didn't want to go near it. But, you know, certainly with my dad, that was, like I said, a major factor. His drinking led me not to drinking. And it's interesting now because all three of my daughters, they drink socially. So, so I can't. So it's not to say like you grew up in a household where you never saw alcohol consumed. In fact, I don't even allow. I don't even allow it in the house. I said, look, you guys can have your
Mhm.
friends over, whatnot. The only thing I only ask you one thing: no alcohol. And I've only broke that exception a couple times. I think when my daughter turned 21, she wanted to drink. So again, they brought some wine over and had a drink or something like that. But generally speaking, I just don't want alcohol in the house. You guys do it. I can't control. You want to go to a bar, a restaurant, order your Merlot, do what you want to do. It's just something that I've just never, um, I can't control that. They're grown women now. So, but bringing it home, not in the house. And one time I caught, I think my daughter, she was entertaining a gentleman, and I guess he brought it in,
Oh
and I
boy.
wasn't so much mad at him. I was mad at her because I was like, look, you know the rules here. And so I wasn't going, so again, I kind of had to chew her out, because again, you should know now we don't do that here. But after they left and everything in the living room, whatever, he had the bottle in the brown in the brown bag. I think it might have been some Crown Royal or something like that. And I was like, no. So I had to pull her aside and said, look, I'm not going to talk to him. I'm talking to you, because like I said, you know the deal here, and we don't do that here. So it was definitely something that I had to get her straightened out on.
Let
But
me ask you this question, Paul.
yeah,
Let's say somebody didn't know you have a sober life, and they say, "Hey, like Greeks, like they like usually bring a bottle of wine as like, hey, and like thank you for inviting me for dinner or something," and they give you a bottle of wine, and but they didn't know we were sober. Would you be offended? How would you feel about that?
no way I would be offended. I would either gently say, no, thank you, or even if there might have been one time when I might have taken it and I may have given it to someone else. I think I might have did that once, but generally speaking, I say appreciate it, because then I've gotten, like, even at work sometimes, you have you have a celebration or something. They want to, a reward that they give you, and they used to give you, yeah, they said the three people who tell you the truth: kids, older people who don't give a crap anymore, and those who are inebriated with alcohol. They're the most honest people in the world. In fact, it was interesting, even with my dad, his most honest moments. I knew that he loved me because only when he was drinking he would tell me, but he would be his most truthful self. His emotions, everything would come out when he was drinking. But before that, he was just a stoic, would barely say a word to you. But
He
all the
wasn't a
stuff
people
came
person,
out in
was he?
that. What's that?
He was never a people person, was he?
Back in earlier times, certainly him and my mom, certainly they were very much people. They had parties every week. They were a major contributor to bring a lot of my folks from the South up to the North. They were highly social. But again, I think as my mom's mental illness started to really, cash in, his drinking got heavier. So it just became a very toxic environment. So I think he kind of pulled away from a lot of that when as he got older. And so, again, the circumstances of that were certainly such. And yeah, and I know Eric, I know his mom, I loved her very much. And yeah, so definitely seeing and being able to identify alcoholism if it does run in the family. Yeah, I never wanted to entertain that, certainly in my life. And so again, for those reasons, I stayed away from it. But I'm always gracious. Like I said, I have no, I'm not one of those hardline Christians like, oh, you shouldn't be drinking, that's a sin and all. No,
Let me ask you this question,
I
Paul.
don't believe that, and certainly I don't never come at anybody with that energy, especially if they come with good intent.
Let me ask you a question, Paul. I know you have brothers and sisters. Do
Mhm.
they drink any shape, way, or form?
I think if I was to say at present time, they've all drank. I would say yes at certain times. But again, with age and time, they probably at certain points drink less. Certainly some of them, especially if they had to start taking medications, the thing you also got to be very careful about is if you're on different meds for whatever reason and you're consuming alcohol while on those meds, you better be very careful about that. It can have a very deleterious effect. So again, depending on where they are in their lives, yeah, I think they've all had that. And again, and to different degrees. I won't go into details, but to different degrees. I don't think any of them battled alcoholism per se, but certainly it was certainly something that they were very comfortable. Some of them got very comfortable and accustomed to. And when you went to their houses, you can see they had their liquors in the garage, or in the, you know, people used to have alcohol cabinets where they would store all of their alcoholic beverages, or they have the drinks and the drinks and the cold beer in the refrigerator. So again, it's across the board, but I'm the only one who has, like I said, pretty much has never had a drink, and never really had a desire to drink. That's why, like, people go to wine tastings. Like, I have no interest, and I would never take my wife on that or take a date on that, because that was just never something I was into.
I do understand that, and when I was doing Uber part time, I took a lot of people to the winery up here, and it was like, shit, I didn't realize how many people actually go to those things.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice, the way they describe it, it's a nice thing. They usually feed you, like, a nice lunch. It's very adult. It's very and it's usually classically run. They gotta go through, show you, like you said earlier, teach you how to smell the cork, and how you let the drink sit for a minute. I mean, it could be it could be a very nice date, again, if you're into that sort of thing. So yeah, I like I said, I got no angst for people who decide to go. I really don't. But it's just that, even when we went on that cruise back in December, they offer like this drink package, because again, the cruise ships, they make most of their money off the drinking. So it was like, no, we don't need, even if for the virgin drinks, like the virgin daiquiris and whatnot. It was like, you know what, we got away with water and just some of the fountain beverages that they had. If I wanted something extra or whatever, I just ordered that. It was a lot cheaper. But that's one of the ways that they get you on the cruises is, buy the drink package, because every drink on the ship is going to be like $20-$25. You know what I mean? So again, if that's something that you're into, or people go on vacation for the specific reason to consume alcoholic beverages, or at least consume it on a level that they wouldn't do otherwise, because they know they got to go to work the next day or whatever. But here you on the vacation, on the cruise, you can get pretty much as lush as you want to be. Just don't be near the edge of the boat. You don't want to go over the bow of the boat because you're inebriated or something. But yeah, people lose themselves in that. And that was another thing too. I think what also influenced me from drinking was my college experience. Because again, we used to have Thursday nights at Rutgers was basically a frat night, a Greek night. So all of the folks on my floor, they would go to all the Greek fraternity houses, because they had parties like every Thursday night. That was like a big thing. That was rush. They were trying to get pledges and whatnot. So everybody would go out Thursday night. After midnight, everybody would be coming back, and you would think they were coming back from war. You'd have one guy totally passed out. You got four guys
I seen those
carrying one guy. One guy's got one arm, the other guy's got another arm. One's got a leg, the other guy's got another leg. Gets back, puking up. Well, once they get up, they start puking and whatnot. My freshman roommate, nice guy, but he threw up in our room. And the stench of it didn't go away for weeks. It was still, even with the bleach and all that, it still was like a lingering thing in the room.
So you had a lot of bad experiences with alcohol, it sounds like.
Well, I would say interesting ones. I mean, I think my father's experiences with it, seeing up close, that was certainly a major catalyst. But just when I saw it up close, I think the thing was, it's not worth it. I remember a guy, he was he had this girl, and I just remember cracking up the whole night about it. He had this girl. She was so drunk. She was half naked, passed out in another guy's bedroom. And for whatever reason, he didn't move her. And after some time, they're like, hitting her on the face or whatnot. She is passed out. And then all of a sudden we see this, yes, the worst day in history, because that's what the guy was saying. It's like, the guy, he would not move to get her out because the guy was saying, it's like, look, you need to get, and he kind of sounded like Morris Day from Prince in the time. He's like, look, you need to get this girl out my bed. And he just wouldn't do anything. And he was just like so into himself. And then what happened eventually was that she actually peed in his bed. We saw this puddle. We saw this puddle start to kind of brew up between her legs as she was there. And unfortunately, it just didn't end well. So again, just seeing the state that it put people in. And I'm just saying to myself, it's like, nah, man, like this isn't, this is something I just never want to find myself in, even if I have the discipline to say, oh, I'll just have one once in a while. It was just that culture that you had all these kids. This was freshman year. So you had all these kids who came from Pennsylvania or from Florida or whatever. They're thousands of miles away from home, and they're just going to do anything and everything. And thank goodness we didn't have, obviously you had, hard drugs and stuff, but, not now. They didn't have the fentanyl and whatever else that they're using these days. Weed wasn't legal then. But, certainly you had people who just kind of came out and it was like college was all about party. And that's what they were there for. Some, kind of grew out of it. Some people never grew out of it and they flunked out. But it was because, again, that scene of just being totally hedonistic, and alcohol was like a big part of it. I've been to frat parties where you had the beer bong and the funnel. They used to have the funnel, right? And then, the guy would take the funnel of beer and how much you could drink and things of that nature. I saw
it's called the Kraken. It's literally you put in a beer and you open it and you chug it. It's like the funnel, similar concept.
Yeah.
When
these guys would pour from the top, and you had to kind of constantly like consume it and whatnot, and just people would get rowdy. And I'm just like, this isn't, and the crazy thing about it, for the guys who were so drunk, you couldn't remember what you did the night before anyway. Like, well, what happened? What did I do last night? Dude, if you were there, you would have, So that's the thing. What's the use of yes, the funnel and the keg stand. Absolutely. So it's like, what's the use?
Guys. So when I worked at East Stroudsburg University, and I used to talk to campus PD all the time. I was cool with them. I used to give them free food. So I used to joke around, if you see me speeding campus, don't give me a fucking ticket because I'm not going to feed your fuckers. And then we joke around. But Friday night and Saturday night was the busiest nights for them. You see them flying up and down through the night. What the fuck is going on here? And I finally asked them one day, why is you guys always running back and forth like drunk kids are on campus? We got to, make sure they're okay. If they might be renting a house on campus, but they're still campus responsibility no matter what.
Yeah.
The second thing I was going to say is not the worst. My first bad experience with alcohol. I was very young, and my first time being drunk, actually, to be honest with you, except being 5-year-old in a diaper on the head.
How are you? Because some people, again, it's like the opposite personality comes. Like if you're very quiet, I've seen people like you're very quiet, very reserved. Like I said, my dad, and then they get drunk, and then they get real life of the party, all excited and stuff. And then people do the reverse. Like you kind of like a chill guy, but people kind of get kind of stupid when they. So when you did get drunk, what did you from where you were? What person did you become when you got drunk?
I'm gonna answer one. Let me say one thing before we answer that. All right. So the first time I was drinking pretty heavily. I was drinking a little. I was mixing a lot, and that's a no in drinking. Don't really mix. So my cousin goes, "Don't sit down, dude. You're gonna black out. You've been drinking way too much." And I didn't listen. I blacked out. Don't think I remember punching a freaking wall because I was going through a lot of issues at the moment. You know what I'm saying? My knee got blown out and all this stuff. But moving forward, as I got older, it really depends who I'm around. I realize I'm never an angry drunk. I'm not a drunk who starts fights or anything like that. I'm more like a laughing, like joking around, stuff like that. Now, if you introduce my girl, if I'm dating a girl at the moment, or I'm talking to a girl, or I met a girl, let's say my hands are a little flirtatious and I'm touchy, if that makes sense.
Oh man.
Not to be in disrespect. I'm not going to be grabbing her ass right at the bar, but
these days, even the touching thing. I mean, you got to be so careful now with space and distance and all that. Like a lot of stuff that might have worked back in the 70s and 80s and 90s. These days, it's like everybody respect the boundaries. So again, if you get a little touchy, in or flirt too much. That's the thing I'm always worried about. It's like you got people who, if you drink so much that you pass out, who knows what can happen to you? Either they can steal your wallet, or
Yeah.
if you're a woman, they can assault you in certain ways. I mean, there's so many, and like I said, we didn't have a lot of these things down like the fin, like they're spiking drinks and whatnot with these drugs and whatnot, that you just never want to have yourself like in a situation that you could be compromised by someone who may not necessarily have your best interest. And so that's even more today, because it seems like there's a lot more stuff that's available. Yeah, I mean, there was drugs, Quaaludes and all that kind of stuff, uppers, downers. People had that stuff, but I never saw a ton of that when I was in college. You talk about from 87 to 91. So I never saw a ton of that in college. But now it seems like what kids have access to, or younger people have access to, is something where you really got to be careful when you're in mixed company or people you don't know, and stuff can go down at any moment. So I tell my girls all the time, it's like, don't get stupid out here. Know your surroundings, know the people who you're with.
I totally agree. 100%.
So that you don't put yourself in a situation where you can be compromised in any way. That was always my biggest fear, my girls being in college.
I have a couple of rules when I go out. One, I try to get a bottle drink most of the time, so I can, keep easy. It's less chance something is slipping in a bottle than a glass. But if I drink a glass, my hands are always on my glass. I don't ever let go of my glass till I'm finished with it. And that's my personal rule. I never leave my drink unattended. If I did, I'll just go to order a new drink. Simple as that. And I only try to keep my cash on me. Cash if I'm drinking, or my card. But I rarely bring my wallet when I go to drink. I just bring the most essential stuff. I've been lucky, I would say. Like, even when I've maybe once or twice met a girl at a bar, but I never really have, like, I used to go with a group of guys, not guys, a group of friends. So we're all hanging out and having a good time.
Do you get bolder when you're drinking?
I'm sorry?
Do you get bolder? Like when you're not drinking, like you meet a girl, are you a little bit nervous? Does the drinking
I get more shy, actually.
More shy when you drink?
Yeah,
okay.
I am actually a shy person, believe it or not. It's funny you believe that.
Which I don't.
Yes. You know what? You've been talking to Father Costantino too much. He said that to me the other day. When it comes to the opposite sex, I get very shy. I don't know why. It's always been like that. It's very rare for me to go up to him like, "Hi, I'm going this way now." It's like, so when I do get the nerve to go up to him, like, it's just very simple conversation. It's rare when I meet a girl. Like, I remember one time I was at a bar and I went out to have a cigarette and we had a conversation. She bought me a cigarette and then we just opened a conversation. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I went out this summer. So, like, we're both of guys were supposed to go out. Everybody bailed on me. Like, hey, I got my son. I got this. I got that. I'm like, you know what? It's a fucking Saturday night. I have no work tomorrow. Fuck this. I got dressed. I took a shower. No, it was a Friday night. I lied to you because we do our show on a Saturday on Hangout. I get dressed. I went down the street and I had a drink by myself.
Yeah.
So one of the guys there realized, he recognized me. He see me around. Like, I know you. Like, yeah, I know your boss. And that's how we start talking. He goes, yo, he goes like, if you want to get lucky, you want to go over here. That's the hot spot. I'm like, I'm not trying to get lucky, but it'd be nice to meet somebody. I'm like, fuck it. I realized, oh man, I'm the old man in here. Everybody was young kids from college doing all this shit. Like, yeah, I need to get the fuck out of here. So I took my drink and I get the fuck out of there.
Yeah.
And like the choir bars are more my scene now than the bars that have music like that. And I don't mind like that. I really don't. Yeah. But I need to be in a nice group setting with people because that's not my type of scene anymore.
Gotcha. Want to answer Coach's question in terms of, and what he's referring to here, the alphas, the Qs, kappas, the basically the D9 fraternities and sororities. No, in part because none of those fraternities on campus had houses. Like, again, you talk about what a lot of these sort of the white fraternities and whatnot. Again, they got money, so they own property on the campus. Okay, either they're so again they're fairly well funded. So again, you can do a lot of stuff, I guess, in your building, so to speak. Most of the D9s, they just had parties, and the parties would be either at the student center, so you would rent the students sent her out. You get on the schedule for a party, so you brought in the only thing you had to pay for basically was a DJ. Everybody was basically responsible for their own drink or food or whatever. But again, there was just parties that was done more so than individual things. I mean, folks had alcohol in their dorms or whatever, then that was another story. But no, there was certainly no, there was, you didn't see that. You didn't see the beer bongs and things of that nature. Again, that doesn't mean that people didn't drink, but certainly it wasn't like a theme of the party, or it wasn't the reason why you went. You went there to meet girls. You went there to dance. I mean, because again, a lot of the music was popping at that time. Shout out to 80s and 90s house music. So you were there, and hopefully you might meet your future wife there or whatever. And you know, that sort of thing. So definitely much more of a party atmosphere with the D9s versus the frat house atmosphere where anything could go down at any given time. You could take a girl up to a room or something like that and do business. Just all kinds of stuff can happen in that situation. But yeah, definitely much more open. And again, part of it was due to the fact that they didn't have you know, the facilities, their own personal facilities to facilitate that type of behavior.
One thing I realized
yeah.
also when I was having all those crazy parties at my house back when I was younger, I realized I put a stop to it fast because people were doing some stupid shit. Like things were breaking right and left. People were like going upstairs without my permission in my bedroom, and you know, they're trying to literally fuck in my bedroom. I'm like, get the fuck out of my room. Nobody's fucking in there except me. And it was just some things like I feel like when people are drinking, they forget the respect factor, and people start showing up to my house like, who the fuck, get the fuck out of my house. I don't know you, motherfucker. You're not drinking my beer and shit. I'm like, oh, come on, man, share the wealth. Like, no, we're not sharing the fucking wealth. I don't know who you are. I know these people. They're gonna have my back if something shit go down. And literally, my military friends stepped up like 2 ways to get out. You walk out, or we carry you out. You can pick. And of course, you probably know how that went. They got carried out by a couple Marines and Army guys.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, and sport coach's point. Yeah, definitely. Parties at student centers. That's how the D9s. That's now again. I don't know. Now some of the southern schools, I don't know because I'm thinking that some of these HBCUs, maybe they do have property there. Maybe you have more flexibility to do that sort of thing. But at the PWIs, no, you were there. You know, you had to work with what they gave you and tried to make the most of yeah, exactly. Again, D9s have no little to no leeway at PWIs. That's definitely true. Says Sparta, have you ever seen the movie Animal House? Now, again, that's one of those movies that I might have saw bits and pieces of, but I never watched a ton of it. I thought it was a little overrated, but yeah,
it's overrated. It's Hollywood, a lot of it.
Yeah, they definitely gave that image of Greek life there, and again, it was like, how these people went on to have anything successful in life, I have no idea. But that was the portrayal there. So we have INC intelligent Neanderthal caveman. I think I was shy about knowing. Okay, so we'll block that for now. But yeah. So but shout out to him being in the building. Yeah, the toga parties and stuff like that there. Yeah, I mean, definitely it was almost like some of the stuff was like scenes out of Caligula or something like that, but it wasn't something that was like I said, I participated a lot in, but at least I knew enough in order to know what I didn't want. And so most of the time we just kind of stayed away from that kind of activity. But what I am concerned about, again, as we come towards the end of the show, again, we do see one of the slides that I saw earlier. It was dealing with this idea, and let me just go back to it. I just wanted to share this. It happens in Europe, but I'm wondering if it also happens here in the States. This idea that as people get older, as you see here on this graph here, we didn't get a chance to go over it. Alcohol consumption tends to increase as one gets older. Now, again, I was happy to hear that our pain earlier in the show, you talked about as he got older, he kind of, drinks less, at least the hard stuff anyway. But you just wonder what happens as a person gets older that may trigger them to drink more, or just generally. Why do you think, Pete, and this will be, sort of open-ended question. Like I said earlier, with the United States and with Russia, or certainly that former, Soviet Union, the alcoholism. is pretty high relative to other countries around the world. And I'm just wondering, like, why do you think that is, even though we're supposed to be amongst one of those technically developed nations in the world or whatnot, diversity and all that, but people seem to be caught up in, these vices that, and it doesn't seem to get better as you get older. Why do you think that is? And what is to say about the state of American culture where this is a thing, whereas as we said earlier in Greece, it doesn't seem to be much as big a factor, even though I'm sure all of us know people who are alcoholics and things of that nature, but it's not like rampant. But it seems like in American culture, we see too much of it. Again, 13,000 deaths a year from drunk driving incidences and whatnot. What do you think is driving that? Is it the marketing? Is it just the desperation that people are in, or the depression that people are in? What do you think is going on?
So obviously, life changes. You lose a lot of friends. Unfortunately, now I'm not thinking like it's not talking about like I'm talking about like people started dying off. You look back like, man, I wish I had the opportunity one more time to do that, or have fun one more time, or you lost something you wanted. Depression. Most of it's 95% is depression, and you just need dopamine to just make you happy, and that makes you happy at the moment. You pretty much forget what you're doing sometimes. Like you're drinking yourself to death. Half the times you don't remember half the night. Maybe you were married for years and all of a sudden your wife cheated on you. You're single and like
it takes you to a downward spiral.
Yeah. Like I know a lot of people.
Right. But it's even happening with younger people.
I mean, it's like like when my first Series X screwed me over and everything. It was a downward spiral for me. Everything was falling apart. I lost my business. I was losing this. I was losing that. I was in debt. I was everything. And I'll be honest, I was drinking a little heavier that day. I'm not going to deny it. And it was only for like a day or two tops. But what really snapped out of it is kind of funny, actually. What snapped me out of it. And you're gonna laugh. I laugh at it myself. I something in the background. I was just zoning out, looking outside. I was looking around like I'm gonna lose everything. That's what I was thinking. And a documentary of The Rock was on all fucking things, saying he had $5. Was it $5 or $3? Whatever.
Yeah, something in his pocket. Yeah, he came back from the CFL. Yeah.
Yeah, he came back. He had $7 in his pocket. He had down on his luck. I'm like, I looked at the bottle. I looked at that like, he returned his like, well, can I? And that snapped me out of it. And thank God I was never alcoholic, but even now I don't really drink as much anymore. To be honest with you, like I said, I go to like I realize. I know there's a good pillar for women.
Straight carbs. The alcohol is straight carbs, and it goes to the gut. Absolutely.
Yeah. So like the last time I had a drink was like a couple of months ago for my birthday. I had a drink. Before that was through the summer, twice in the summer. And I'm probably not going to drink till I go on vacation in Maryland to see my best friend Mike. I might have a couple of beers there. That's it. I don't really drink. Maybe if I'm in a hot woman, maybe go out on a date, I might have a drink, but nothing crazy. I drink on a very social occasion now, and it's rare too.
Right. So you never have beer in the house or any kind of beverage?
Well, I have beer sometimes, yeah, but I don't drink it. Why even have it if I don't drink it?
Yeah. It's just I find that people sometimes they kind of numb themselves to like the realities that's going on. It's not so much it makes them even happy to be doing it, but it's like dealing oftentimes with the reality of the situations that they're in or the pressure that's there. Like I said, especially in college, you saw it with a lot of young people. Like I got a test that I got to get an A on this test or else I'll flunk, and I got to go home and I got to deal with my parents or whatnot. So I would know guys who they would get drunk over that, because again, you just don't want to deal with the immediacy of what's going on. So again, the alcohol helps to kind of numb things up. Some guys succumb to that. Some guys fortunately grew out of that, but it's definitely something that is certainly prevalent. And but again, my biggest thing now is when you start mixing things together, when you start mixing prescription drugs or illegal drugs with the alcohol consumption, and again, where does that leave you? I mean, health stuff, I think if you end it early enough, certainly you can avoid stuff down the line. But we all know about drinking, what it does to your liver, and all those things that it can do to you long term. But for a lot of people who are just dealing in the present, um, and again, sometimes, and then now it's difficult because for some people, the prescription stuff isn't really that much better. I mean, people be on Ambien, they be on all kinds of different, pharmaceutical medications that they be on. And sometimes, like, I'd be asking the question, like, we were better off when all you had was alcohol and weed.
So,
but now with all of this stuff that's out there, that people get the oxycodone and all these things that pharmaceutical companies are selling to people, I don't know. Are you kind of jumping out of the frying pan into the fire if you go in another direction? But it just seems like, just as a society or culture, we need a medication for almost everything, right? It's like, you got either you're taking a down, or you're taking an upper, you're taking a mood setter, you're doing ayahuasca, ashwagandha, or you're doing some kind of medicinal something to keep you steady. It just seems like beer or just alcohol in general seems to be an easier route to go for some people, but it certainly doesn't make your problems go away, but it just allows people to kind of veg out and just not deal with stuff. At least that's what I observed more times than not.
So a couple years back, I was working in a factory, and I was just going from job to job. I was trying to find my place in the world at the time, and I actually ended up hurting my shoulder really bad. So went to the ER. I hold it 9 yards. They told me, listen, you got to stay home for a few days. Here, they put my arm in a sling. They gave me oxys, and I looked at them like, okay, just gonna be very careful with these because I don't like them. The first time I took one, the only time I took one, I didn't like how I felt. It knocked me out. I had a sour taste. I didn't like the after effect, the before effect, or during effect. And I know people are like, man, I can't function with oxygen. I can't deal with people. I'm like, grow the fuck up. You're in the wrong field then. And this is a fucking pizza maker. Like, you can't deal with people. You're in the wrong fucking field. If you're not a people person, you cannot be a cook in any type, shape, way, or form. Get the fuck out of this field then.
Yeah.
But if you had, I see it in my field all the time. People are like, one of my chefs at Lehigh University, who was at Sodexo, whose name is Phil, was doing a line of coke right on my prep table. I'm like, the fuck you doing, dude? They covered it up because the company would look bad. People are, doing hardcore drugs in a regular restaurant business. But in a corporate world, they're really cracking down on this really hard now. They wouldn't even hire you if you have a marijuana card. They're literally telling you, if you're doing that, what else are you doing? They wouldn't hire you. And because it's not federalized yet. Don't forget that. It's only state.
No, you're right. Yeah.
So they don't have to hire you. Like, hospitals won't hire you if you have a weed card. Simple.
Yeah, because on federal level, I think it's still a class 1. I mean, it's still.
I think it's not that bad.
It's pretty high up there in terms of compared to other substances. But yeah, man. I mean, like I said, no judgment. Hopefully, this was a useful conversation tonight. Again, no judgment on those if you choose to drink or choose not to drink, your beverage of choices and whatnot. Just like the commercials I grew up saying, always drink responsibly. Definitely don't become a slave. You shouldn't be a slave to anything, Bible tells me. So even with those occasional indulgences that people choose to engage in, certainly enjoy them if you find them worthy of enjoying. But again, never be ruled by them. And I think that'll probably be my closing message as we go through the show. But I found this to be an interesting conversation, one that certainly I think both Peter and I have been affected in one way or another personally. Myself, again, never having drank, but certainly I've seen it up close and what it can do to people, good and bad. I mean, I've seen again, people drink responsibly, but again, I've seen a lot of the negative of it to where it just didn't become something that I wanted part of my life, and so I'm definitely able to do that. But in any event, any closing thoughts on your part?
I'm gonna close this show like I close on my own shows always. Be responsible always, like I say, do everything correctly. But I always close it with 2 words always. And you know what I'm gonna say, Paul, is stay fresh, stay safe. There's a reason I say that. Stay fresh because we gotta look sharp for the ladies. Come on, your cigar, your hair, I got a nice haircut now. Like, and stay safe. Things are replaceable.
Yeah,
you're not.
absolutely.
Keep in mind, there's only one Greek guy who has the Spartan SQ network around. There's only one of me. You can't make imagine if it was two of me, Paul. How crazy the world would be. Don't answer that question. Do not fucking. I will choke slam through this camera to you.
I hear you.
Come on,
and just to address Uncle Jeff again, I'm not comparing weed and alcohol. All what I was my main point is that compared to what people are hooked on or addicted to today, I grew up in a time you didn't have all that stuff. So it seems like now is it are those substances, I'm not saying one is good, we can debate over whether or not weed is good for you or not, or alcohol or what have you. But I'm just saying, comparing those two things, which when I was growing up, more times than not, that's what people, if they got hooked on anything, it was those. But now it seems like they're being hooked on a lot of other things. And I'm just wondering, were we better off when we only kind of had those two primary things? That, yeah, you had angel dust and coke and all those kind of things back then. I'm not ruling those guys out either, but it just seems like from a pharmaceutical perspective, people are getting hooked on a lot of things that are even by prescription. And we just got to see, are people better off or not? So that's really the comparison or the contrast that I was making, not between alcohol and weed in and of themselves. But again, hopefully you guys appreciated the show tonight. And thank you especially to the Snake Fiend, Braxton the Snake Fiend. Again, much apologies for your losses, and certainly for those who have lost people either to alcoholism or that they may have been a victim of a drunk driving accident. Certainly, my heart's with you on that, and certainly, yeah. I mean, it's definitely, it's definitely a problem. But appreciate for everyone being in the chat tonight. Thank you, Uncle Jeff, as always. Deep brother. I mean, really appreciate him. I don't always agree with him, but he is a deep thinker. I was going to say,
Paul, before you go, if he wants to reach out to one of us, maybe we can do a show about, I don't know, he was talking about weed. Maybe we should do a little show. Let's see his opinion on it.
Yeah, that. I mean, he's a comedian. I mean, he has a lot of background and whatnot. So he was certainly one thing with Uncle Jeff. You will definitely get a perspective that you may not have been expecting, but he just thinks things about things very differently. But I appreciate him being here tonight. Certainly, he honors us by being here tonight. So again, my man Anton from New Jersey, thank you always for being with us. The Queen is in the building, Lady Navoa. My man, my brother for almost friend for over 40 years. My man Eric in the building tonight. INC Intelligent Neanderthal Caveman. Thank you for being here. The coach also in the building tonight. I just want to give all my guys lost in translation. Thank you also for being here tonight. Mariana was also in the building tonight. So for everyone who participated in the chat tonight, certainly we appreciate you guys always supporting us. And again, our goal is to make this show and this platform better. Expect to see more interviews in the future, having guests come on, and we just want to have intelligent, informed conversation in these spaces. So again, for those of you who are with us, make sure before you leave tonight, make sure you hit the like button on the way out. Again, both here and also visit the Sparta HQ network. He's working hard to grow the platform and whatnot, and we're expecting big things from the Sparta HQ network in the near future. So for everyone with us tonight, again, my name is Mr. Bennett, and he is.
This is Sparta!
Sparta, aka Peter, aka Paniotis. This is the gray area. You guys enjoy your week. Take care. God bless, and we'll see you next time.